I never meant to become a single dad. I only meant to buy milk. That was the line that echoed in my head as I stared at my reflection in the gas station bathroom mirror. Dried blood crusting near my eyebrow, a toddler screaming in the background, and my heart pounding louder than the sirens approaching in the distance. My name is Caleb Monroe, 34, from Boise, Idaho. If you asked anyone a year ago who I was, they'd tell you I was a quiet guy working the checkout line at a local grocery store. A man who smiled too politely, kept to himself, and occasionally brought in homemade cookies on Fridays for the staff. No one would have guessed the hell I was hiding behind those tired eyes. I had a wife once. Madeline. She had a voice like honey and a temper like kerosene. Beautiful, wild, impossible to hold. When we met, I was 22, naive, and already sure she was the sun I'd orbit for the rest of my life. But stars don't orbit anyone, they burn. And 1 year ago she vanished. Left a sticky note on the fridge next to a half-eaten banana. Caleb, you'll be better without me. Don't try to find me. Love the girls for me. We had 2 daughters. Ivy, 6, with curly auburn hair and a laugh that made strangers smile. And Sophie, 3, still barely putting sentences together. But her eyes were sharp, like she understood more than she could say. Madeline's note didn't come with an explanation. It's just her wedding ring in the sink and the car gone. No one saw her again. The sheriff ran a wellness check. I filed a missing persons report. The weeks passed, then months. Eventually, even the sheriff stopped returning my calls. And I just kept showing up. It's for work, for Ivy's kindergarten drop-offs, it's for Sophie's temper tantrums and late-night fevers and broken crayons. I became both parent and ghost, shell of myself, surviving off frozen waffles and coffee, gone cold. But things didn't fall apart until that night at the gas station. Ivy had a fever. Sophie was screaming. I had $11 in my pocket and an empty carton of milk back home. I drove down to the 24-hour gas stop on Overland Road, kids in pajamas, Sophie wailing in her car seat. I parked, locked the doors, ran in, and that's when everything turned. Inside, 2 men were already yelling at the cashier. One of them, tall, gaunt, covered in tattoos like highway signs, pulled out a gun and pointed it at the poor kid behind the counter. I froze. He turned and saw me. "Hey, you get on the floor?" I dropped to my knees. My heart was choking me. But then Sophie screamed, loud, from the car. The kind of scream a dad knows means something's wrong. That bastard. He looked out the window, saw my car, saw my girls, and smiled. "What's the matter, old man? You leave your babies out there?" I can't explain what happened next. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was rage. Maybe it was the ghost of Madeline whispering, "Do something." But I charged. I don't remember how I got the gun out of his hands. I just remember blood. Mine, his, the sound of glass. The cashier crying, Ivy crying, and blue lights. Questions, handcuffs. They thought I was part of it. They thought I was the third guy. I spent 3 nights in jail. Ivy stayed with a neighbor. Sophie, with a foster temp. By the time they cleared my name, thanks to the gas station camera footage and the traumatized cashier who finally spoke up, my world was already falling apart. And then came the next hit. Madeline's parents, rich, judgmental retirees in Oregon, filed for emergency custody. They claimed I was unfit, that I had violent tendencies, that my financial instability and recent arrests made me a danger to the girls, and I was served papers the next morning. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat in my truck in the Walmart parking lot, watching the sunrise through a cracked windshield, gripping the steering wheel like it could stop the universe from spinning. I had no money, no lawyer, no idea how to fight a system designed to crush men like me. So all I had were my girls, and the ghost of a woman who left without goodbye. And so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I started writing. I didn't know how to be a lawyer, but I knew how to bleed. I've been doing it quietly for years. After getting served with custody papers, I went into survival mode. That night, while the girls were asleep, Ivy curled up next to her stuffed fox, Sophie snoring with her fingers still sticky from apple juice. I stayed up researching everything I could about family court, custody rights, and what counted as parental stability. Turns out being poor counted against you more than being absent. The next morning, I went to the Boise legal aid office, shirt tucked, hands shaking. A kind volunteer named Thomas Gage, mid-40s, beard like a lumberjack, sat across from me and read my case file with quiet eyes. "You love your daughters, Mr. Monroe?" I blinked. "They're my entire damn world." He nodded. "Then I'll help you. I don't do miracles, but I fight like hell." That was the first time I felt like someone was on my side. Thomas helped me file a response. We had 3 weeks to prepare for the hearing. 3 weeks to prove I wasn't a failure. 3 weeks to dig up every reason why Madeline's parents, who hadn't seen Ivy and Sophie in over a year, had no right to take them from me now. But then, in the middle of all that, something strange happened. It started with a knock. One afternoon, while Ivy was drawing chalk flowers on the driveway and Sophie was watching Mona for the 100th time, someone knocked on the door. A woman, mid-30s, short brown hair, olive coat, holding a manila envelope. "Are you Caleb Monroe?" she asked. She handed me the envelope. This was left at my clinic. Over a year ago. I don't know why she waited so long. But she said, if anything ever happened, if she disappeared, this letter was meant for you. She turned and walked away before I could ask a single question. I opened it right there on the porch. It was Madeline's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I'm sorry, Caleb. There are things you don't know. Things I couldn't say aloud. So I wasn't just scared, I was hunted." The letter went on, disjointed, like she'd written it during a panic attack. She mentioned a man named Wesley Carver, a name I didn't recognize. She said she'd seen him again, said he'd found her, said she feared for the girls. Don't trust anyone, not even my parents. Especially not my parents. That last line made me drop the letter like it was burning. Ivy came over, holding a piece of chalk. "Daddy, are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Just got some old mail, sweet pea. Why don't you draw a unicorn next?" That night, after the girls were in bed, I reread the letter 10 times. Who was Wesley Carver? And what the hell did Madeline mean by hunted? The next morning, I called Thomas and told him everything. He paused a long time before answering. "If that letter's real, Caleb, it changes everything. You think it's enough to stop the custody suit? Maybe, if we can prove the grandparents knew something. Or worse, were involved. But we need more than a letter." So I started digging. First, I found Madeline's old journals in a box in the garage. Stuff she used to scribble in late at night when she thought I was asleep. One entry stood out. "Wes is back in Idaho. I saw him at the pharmacy." He smiled at me. My skin's still crawling. I checked the date. It was 2 weeks before she disappeared. Then, through a friend at the grocery store, I found an old coworker of Madeline's named Jordan. She worked with her at a bookstore 2 towns over. I asked Jordan if she remembered anything strange. "Yeah," she said, "there was this guy. Slick hair, dark suit, smelled like mint and money." She said he was an old family friend. But every time he showed up, her hands would shake. What was his name? Wesley Carver. There it was again. I Googled him. Nothing came up. No social profiles. No news. No LinkedIn. Just a few old real estate records and a company registered in Nevada that was now inactive. I was chasing a ghost, but ghosts leave fingerprints. I was determined to find them. Meanwhile, the girls were watching me closely. Ivy started drawing pictures of 3 people. Me, her, and Sophie, standing on one side of a river, with a giant shadow on the other side. When I asked her what it meant, she just said, "That's the man Mommy was scared of." I stared at her drawing, chills crawling up my neck. I was no longer just fighting a custody case. I was fighting shadows from Madeline's past. Shadows I didn't understand yet. But if they wanted to come for my daughters, they'd have to go through me first. The hearing date loomed closer. I had a letter from a vanished wife, a scared 6-year-old, a dead-end name. But I also had a fire in my chest that wouldn't go out. I'd already lost Madeline. I wasn't losing my girls, not without a war. The courthouse in Ada County felt colder than any winter I'd ever known. I arrived early, dressed in the only suit I owned, a faded navy thing I wore to my dad's funeral. Thomas Gage walked beside me, a briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other, wearing a face I'd never seen him make before. "Worry? You nervous?" I asked, holding the door. I swallowed, terrified. "Good," he said. "It means you care." Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Quiet, carpeted, almost peaceful. If you didn't know, it was the place where families shattered, Across the aisle sat Nancy and George Whitaker, Madeline's parents. Her mother wore a long burgundy coat, lips tight with judgment. Her father tall, clean-cut, gold watch flashing under the lights, barely looked at me. They hadn't spoken to the girls in over a year. Now they wanted to raise them? My stomach twisted. The judge entered. Hun. Judith Abrams, late 50s. Silver hair pinned tight with eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Mr. Monroe, she began after the introductions. Do you understand the Whitakers are seeking emergency custody of your children due to? What they allege is a pattern of emotional instability, financial hardship, and unsafe behavior? Yes, Your Honor. And do you deny these allegations? Every word of them? Thomas rose.
Your Honor.
The petitioner's argument relies on outdated stereotypes about single fathers and does not account for the emotional well-being of the children involved. Mr. Monroe has not only provided for Ivy and Sophie, he has done so in the face of abandonment, poverty, and emotional trauma. We ask that the court allow his daughters to remain in the only stable home they know. Then came the Whitakers' attorney, Kendra Mills. Sharp blazer, voice like an ice cube cracking. Your Honor, she said, Mr. Monroe was arrested at a crime scene with his children present. Regardless of the charges being dropped, his decision-making has endangered those girls. He cannot financially provide for them. He has no extended family support. This is not a man raising daughters. This is a man surviving them. I clenched my fists. Thomas rested a hand on my arm, and then came the witnesses. They brought in a CPS worker who inspected my apartment. She admitted it was clean, safe, that Ivy was well-behaved, Sophie affectionate. But they also brought in a psychologist hired by the Whitakers, who claimed that Ivy had residual anxiety, likely stemming from household instability. When I looked at Ivy, sitting with a court-appointed guardian near the back, her eyes searched mine like she was asking, "What's going to happen to us, Daddy?" And then someone new walked in. A woman, mid-40s, blonde ponytail, tall boots. Sat down in the back row behind the Whitakers. I didn't recognize her. But when she made eye contact with me, she nodded. Just once. At recess, she found me in the hallway. Mr. Monroe, she said, my name is Celia Grant. I used to work with Madeline, the realty firm in Meridian. My heart stopped. You knew my wife? She hesitated. I knew what she was afraid of. Celia pulled a small flash drive from her pocket. This has recordings, emails. Madeline collected everything. She told me if anything ever happened to her, someone had to know. My hands trembled as I took it. What's on it? She looked around nervously. Proof. Proof of what I didn't yet know. But I tucked the drive into my coat like it was oxygen. Back in court, Thomas asked for a recess extension to review new evidence. Judge Abrams gave us 24 hours. That night, Thomas and I sat in my apartment, while the girls slept in the next room. Ivy had a fever. Sophie kept muttering in her sleep. We opened the files, and what we found. It was like lighting a match in a room full of gas. Audio file 1. Madeline's voice, whispering frantic. He said if I told anyone, I'd regret it. But I think he's watching the girls now. I keep seeing that same black car outside the school. Email chain. Subject re. Keep your mouth shut. From Querver67 at you think your husband or your kids will be safe if you keep digging around Mads? Walk away, I'm warning you. Video clip. Security camera footage. Man in a suit, tall black coat, gray scarf, slapping Madeline's phone from her hand in a parking garage. She falls. He leans in, says something, then walks away like nothing happened. I felt sick. Thomas was pacing. This guy Carver, he's not just some weirdo. He's got reach. Madeline's parents knew him. Hell, I think they protected him. We took the evidence to the judge the next morning. The Whitakers looked stunned. Kendra Mills turned pale. Judge Abrams sat still as stone while Thomas laid it all out. I submit to the court that the Whitakers knew about the threats to Mrs. Monroe's safety, yet withheld this information while attempting to remove the children from the only parent who fought to protect them. Then he showed the video. Nancy Whitaker gasped. George didn't move, just clenched his jaw. Judge Abrams called for a recess. I sat outside the courtroom on a bench, holding my face in my hands. And then Evie sat next to me. Her guardian must have allowed her. Daddy? She said. I looked up. Her eyes were glassy. Are we gonna be okay? I nodded, though I didn't know. As long as I've got you and Sophie, I can take on the world. She leaned her head on my arm. Then I'll help. A moment later, the bailiff called us back in. Judge Abrams cleared her throat and stared at the courtroom like she could see through every lie we'd ever told. It is the judgment of this court that Mr. Monroe retains full custody of Ivy and Sophie Monroe. The petition for emergency custody is denied. This court will open a separate investigation into the conduct of the petitioners and their associates. I didn't cry, not until I got outside and saw Ivy and Sophie holding hands on the steps, grinning at me like I was the sun finally coming out after a year-long storm. We went home that night and ordered pizza. Ivy made a crown out of paper towels and dubbed me King Daddy. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Wesley Carver was still out there. Ghosts don't vanish just because you win in court. You'd think winning custody would bring peace. But peace is a luxury I haven't known in years. After the court hearing, things felt normal for maybe 72 hours. Ivy started sleeping through the night again. Sophie began singing her little shanty songs in the bathtub. I even took them out for pancakes at the old diner down on Fairview Avenue, where the waitress gave us extra whipped cream just for showing up smiling. But beneath it all, I felt it. That cold draft of something unfinished. A door not yet shut. And that door burst wide open the morning I found my tires slashed. All four knifed clean, parked right in front of my apartment, in broad daylight. No witnesses, no note, no security footage. Just a whisper in my head. He knows. I called the cops. Filed the report. They shrugged. Could have been a random act. Could have been a teenager. Could have been nothing. But I knew better. That same day, Ivy came home from school with a drawing in her backpack. It was just crayons. A house. A tree. A sun. But something in the corner stopped me cold. A black car. She'd drawn a black car parked outside the house. Tinted windows. No driver. When I asked her about it, her voice dropped. That car was at school today, she said. It just sat there. Didn't move. I saw it again when the bus dropped me off. My skin went ice cold. I made calls. No one knew a man named Wesley Carver. The address from Madeline's old journal led to a strip mall that had burned down 5 years ago. His name wasn't on any property, business, or a record that made sense. He was Smoke. But smoke still chokes you. So I did what I hadn't done in over a year. I contacted Madeline's sister. Her name was Harper, and she lived in Coeur d'Alene, nearly 7 hours north. The last time I'd heard her voice was the night after Madeline vanished. When she left a voicemail saying, "I don't know what she was into, Caleb, but be careful." I never called her back. Now I did. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice was groggy. 3 a.m.? I didn't even care. "Harper, it's Caleb. I need answers." Silence then. Softly, "You finally found the letter, didn't you?" "Yes, and I found the drive." "I need to know who Carver is." Long sigh. "I was hoping you'd never have to ask." We talked for over an hour. Turns out, Wesley Carver wasn't just some stalker. He was part of a private group Madeline had worked with during college. The elite financial cult, disguised as a mentorship program, called themselves the Horizon Guild. Started out promising scholarships, connections, wealth, but once you were in, you were bound. Through debt, through fear, through secrets. Madeline joined to escape her overbearing parents.
Oh.
She wanted independence. But when she tried to leave, she found herself blackmailed. Wes was their enforcer, Harper said. He'd show up when people started asking too many questions. He made things disappear. "And my wife?" I asked. Harper hesitated. She told me she saw him again 2 weeks before she vanished. Said he looked older, but his eyes hadn't changed. I barely slept after that call. Every creak outside sounded like footsteps. Every shadow felt alive. And then Ivy started sleepwalking again. I woke up at 2 a.m. to find her standing by the window, hand pressed to the glass. "What are you doing, baby?" I whispered. She didn't turn, just said, "He's outside." I pulled her away, heart racing, threw open the blinds. Nothing. No car. No man. Just a street soaked in moonlight. But I knew she wasn't lying. The next morning I found a note on my windshield, scrawled in sharp black ink. "Stop digging, or next time I won't just hurt your tires." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't over. I moved the girls into a motel the next day. Old cheap, but hidden. A friend from high school, Jeremy, who worked in real estate now, Let us crash in one of his vacant rentals for a few weeks. I called Thomas, told him everything. The note, the tires, the drawings. He said the law couldn't help unless something happened. What do you mean something? I snapped. You want one of my girls to disappear first? I'm saying, Thomas said gently. You need real proof. Solid names, solid paper trails. Enough to burn down a man who doesn't legally exist. So I kept digging. And then I found her. Celia Grant, the woman who gave me the flash drive, agreed to meet again. We sat in a dusty coffee shop in Nampa, far from the city. She slid another envelope across the table. Wesley was obsessed with Madeline, she said, not just professionally, personally. She told me once that she caught him watching Ivy's dance recital from a distance. He wasn't supposed to know we were even there. What did he want from her? Celia shook her head. I think control, maybe revenge, maybe love, I don't know. But the guild didn't let people leave, especially not women who knew as much as Madeline did. I opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph, black and white. Faded, but it was him. Wesley. Arms slung around Nancy Whitaker, Madeline's mother. They were smiling, laughing, like old friends. Like something more. Your wife didn't just run, Celia whispered. She was taken. I sat frozen, staring at the picture, realizing, slowly, horrifyingly, that everything I'd known was a lie. Some truths don't free you. They put a target on your back. The photo of Wesley and Nancy Whitaker shattered everything I thought I knew. Madeline hadn't just been betrayed by a stranger. She was betrayed by her own mother, and by extension, so were Ivy and Sophie. I sat alone in the truck for over an hour, staring at that old photograph. In the background was a brick wall, some kind of plaque, but it was too blurry to read. I knew one thing. Wesley wasn't working alone. I had to find out who else was protecting him and where he was hiding. Celia gave me a lead. She said Madeline once mentioned a cabin in Cascade, about 2 hours north, some kind of retreat where guild members used to meet. It was remote, surrounded by forest, no cell service. Madeline had called it the place where silence screamed. I made a choice. I didn't tell Thomas. I didn't call the cops. I packed an overnight bag, left Ivy and Sophie with Jeremy and his wife, and drove into the mountains with nothing but a flashlight. My phone and a fire in my chest I couldn't explain. The cabin was real. It sat half sunken behind trees near Lake Cascade, windows boarded, chimney cracked, a weathered night trespassing sign nailed to the porch. I parked, heart pounding, and stepped out. Silence. Except for the wind through the pines and the slow crunch of snow beneath my boots, I knocked. No answer. I circled the back and found the door unlocked. Inside smelled like dust and ash and old wood. Faint footprints crossed the dirty floor. There were empty liquor bottles, an old typewriter, and on the mantel, a photo of Madeline. Taken when she was younger, maybe 20. Her eyes still bright, her smile still whole. Someone had kept this here. Suddenly I heard it, a floorboard creak. I turned, and there he was, Wesley Carver. He stepped out of the shadows like a ghost summoned by fury. Older than I expected, maybe late 50s, salt and pepper hair, leather coat, sharp cheekbones, and those eyes, dead. He smiled. I figured you'd find this place eventually. I couldn't speak. Not right away. You killed her, I finally said. Wesley raised a brow. That depends. Define killed. I lunged, grabbed his coat, slammed him against the wall. Where is she? But he didn't flinch. Gone, he said flatly. Left like she always does. She was good at running, till she wasn't. My fists shook. You followed her. You threatened her. She left a letter. You were hunting her. And you, he said, eyes cold, have no idea what you're in the middle of. He shoved me off. You think this is about love? He said. This was about obedience. She knew what she signed. She had access, files, names. She betrayed all of us. What was she trying to expose? I demanded. He didn't answer, just gave a low laugh. You think a grocery clerk turned part-time writer can handle secrets like that? He stepped closer, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something behind the cruelty. Regret? Remorse? Or just fatigue? She wanted out, he whispered, And she paid the price. My chest caved. Did you kill her? I asked, voice breaking. Wesley looked at me for a long time, then said no. But I watched her die. Silence slammed the room, where I asked. She was headed north. We met one last time. She gave me everything she had. Flash drive, paperwork. Said it was her goodbye gift. Then she walked into the woods near Tamarack. Never looked back. Did she? She never came out. I staggered backward. Wesley stepped past me and picked up the photo of Madeline from the mantel. She had fire. I liked that. But fire consumes itself eventually. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him bleed. But then he turned and said the one thing that truly broke me. She wasn't running from me in the end. She was running from her mother. I left the cabin shaking. Drove down the mountain with tears blinding me. Madeline had died alone in the forest. After trusting the devil with her secrets, I didn't know if I'd ever find her body. But now I knew the truth, and I knew who helped cover it up. Nancy Whitaker, the same woman who tried to steal my daughters. When I got back to Boise, Thomas was furious. He went up there alone. Caleb, are you insane? Probably, I said, but I got answers. We filed a report with the sheriff's office, gave them everything. The photo, the conversation, the location of the cabin. They opened an investigation, promised to search the Tamarack woods. But part of me knew they'd never find her. Madeline had become part of the forest now. That night, I held Ivy and Sophie close, their heads on my chest, and whispered stories about their mother, about her bravery, about her laugh, about how much she loved them. I promised, I'll never let anyone take you. Never again. But I'd spoken too soon. Because the next morning, I got a call from Ivy's school. She never showed up for class. Neither did Sophie from daycare. I dropped the phone, ran to the car, heart pounding, sirens wailing in my head. I called Jeremy, called the daycare, called every contact I had. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number? Text message? If you want to see your daughters again, stop talking and stay away from the cabin. Attached was a photo. Ivy and Sophie, crying, tied up, inside a dark room. There's a moment, right before your whole world falls apart, where time slows down. Mine was in the middle of an empty parking lot in Boise, staring at a blurry photo of my daughters tied up in some dark room, hands trembling so violently I could barely hold the phone. Ivy's eyes, terrified. Sophie's cheeks, wet with tears. And the caption, "Stop digging, they won't come back." I dropped to my knees. Bile rose in my throat. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. Then something in me clicked. Switch. A fire. This wasn't about fear anymore, it was war. I drove straight to Celia Grant's office, stormed in without knocking. They took them, I told her, slamming my phone on the desk. She went pale. Oh my God. Wesley has them, or someone working for him. He sent me this. She stared at the photo, then at me. Her voice was quiet. There's only one place I know that matches this lighting. I blinked. What? That cabin, the one Madeline mentioned in her journal. There's another one, smaller, hidden deeper in the woods. The guild used it for darker things, so they called it the Echo Room. You know where it is? She nodded. I grabbed her hand. Then take me there. An hour later, we were deep in the Payette National Forest, driving through snow-covered roads barely wide enough for two people on foot. Celia guided me through every turn. Her hand shook the whole time. They made threats when I left, she said. Said if I ever told anyone about the Echo Room, I'd never be seen again. You're brave for doing this? No, she whispered. I'm just tired of being afraid. We reached the clearing just before sundown. A dark wooden shack sat in the trees, smaller than the Cascade cabin, half buried under snow, with a rusted lock on the door and no windows. My heart slammed against my ribs. I got out, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other, and kicked the door open. Inside, darkness, and a sound. A whimper. Ivy, I shouted Sophie. A faint cry, I raced toward the back. Found them, tied together with rope, mouths duct-taped. Huddled in the corner like two forgotten dolls, I dropped to my knees, tore the tape off, untied the ropes. Daddy, Ivy cried, wrapping her arms around my neck. Sophie sobbed against my chest. You're safe now, I whispered. You're safe. But then, footsteps from the front door. I turned, still holding the girls. Wesley Carver stood in the doorway, snow melting on his boots, gun in hand. I warned you, he said. I stood slowly, shielding my daughters behind me. You're not getting near them again. Wesley's eyes were hollow. You think you're the hero? You think your wife was innocent? She tried to leave. That was her only crime. Wesley cocked the gun. I took a step forward. Go ahead. Kill me. But you'll never outrun what's coming. The law knows. The world will know. You're already exposed. He hesitated. And that's when the shot rang out. But it wasn't from him. It was from behind. Wesley collapsed, a clean shot to the shoulder. Celia stood behind him, holding a hunting rifle, hands steady, eyes locked on him. You ruined too many lives, she said. Not anymore. The police came hours later. Celia and I gave our full statements. Thomas met us at the ranger station. The FBI was notified. The Whitakers were subpoenaed. The guild's name hit the press for the first time in history. Wesley Carver was arrested, and my daughters. They were finally safe. A month passed. We moved again, into a small yellow house near Eagle, Idaho, with a fenced backyard, a porch swing, and 3 bedrooms. One for me, one for the girls, and one empty, full of light. For her, Madeline. They never found her body, but they found the spot Wesley described, and a scarf buried in the snow, embroidered with the initials M.W. It was enough. She was gone, but never forgotten. Ivy started therapy. She drew fewer black cars. She laughed more. She stopped sleepwalking. Sophie started preschool again, glued to her stuffed dinosaur, but smiling like she'd never known fear. And me, I wrote. Every night. Pouring the story into pages that made me cry, laugh, ache. A story about a father, a fighter, a woman who ran, a man who followed, and 2 little girls who deserved the world. 6 months later, I self-published the book. Echoes in the Pines. It wasn't flashy, just honest. Within weeks, it went viral. People didn't just read it, they felt it. Fathers messaged me. Survivors of abuse. Parents who lost children. Mothers who vanished from cults and clawed their way back. One message stuck with me. I read your story and remembered who I used to be. Thank you for reminding me it's not too late to start over. That's when I realized. This wasn't just my story. It was ours. Celia moved to Oregon. She volunteers now, helping survivors escape manipulation and coercion. She calls sometimes, sends Ivy postcards. Thomas started a nonprofit. Legal help for single parents in custody wars. Says the Monroe case changed his life. As for me, I kept writing, and I kept living. Ivy is now 7. Sophie turns 5 next month. Last week, Ivy brought home a school project, a paper crown with glitter and construction paper that said, "My hero is my dad." I cried in the parking lot for 20 minutes, but this time, they were happy tears. Some days, I still think about Madeline, wonder if she's out there somehow, part of the wind, part of the snow, whispering through the pines. And every time the wind blows through our backyard, I whisper, I kept my promise. Now I ask you this, what would you do? If the world tried to take your children and no one believed you, would you fight? Would you run? Or would you stand up? Like Madeline did. Tell me in the comments, 'cause somewhere out there, someone's still listening, and they need to know they're not alone.